Mexico is a very divided society. There's a lot of money, but it's concentrated in a small group of people. This creates two completely different realities within the same country. And the division is very evident in Mexican culture, from the way we speak to the way we behave. In this video, you'll learn how to recognize these social dynamics through movie references and memes, so you can understand Mexican pop culture easily. So get ready, because after watching this video, you'll be able to understand Mexican friends and pop culture. In this famous Mexican movie, a teenage girl falls in love with a boy from a different social background. The sister finds out about it. And what's her response? Es un naco.
Bueno, entonces, ¿cómo quieres que les diga? Así se les dice, man, nacos.
If you're Mexican, you just felt something. But if you aren't, you might think it's just another slang word. But in Mexico, words like this can determine the perception some people have about you. Today, we're going to talk about the words, the attitudes, and the unwritten rules that divide Mexican society, and why understanding this is crucial for anyone who wants to truly understand Mexico. That scene from the movie Amarte Duele wasn't just about young love. It was about social class divisions in Mexico. Have you watched the movie? In the movie, the sister doesn't even need to explain why she disapproves. That one word said everything. She comes from a wealthy family. He works at a market stand in a working class neighborhood. When the sister calls him Naco, she's not only disapproving of him, she's rejecting everything about his social class background. Now, you might be thinking, if Naco is about social class, then rich people can never be Nacos, right? Wrong. You can be a millionaire and still be called Naco. Or you can have very little money and not be considered Naco at all. It's about what others perceive as refined behavior, whatever that means. So, if there's a word for people considered low class or with no class, what do Mexicans call the upper class? We call them Fresas, which literally means strawberry. But in Mexican slang, it's used for someone who acts posh or upper class. Let me show you a piece of a video of a very famous Mexican YouTuber who sits down with a self-proclaimed fresa.
O sea, es que hay clases, ¿sabes? Tienes que tener un estilazo, o sea, hablar bien.
If you're interested in watching this full video, I'm going to leave the link on the description. You can spot a fresa right away by how they talk. They say words like, o sea, así tipo como que. If you want to listen to more example, you can watch the series on Netflix, Love is Blind Mexico. I think there are pretty good examples there. Sometimes they mix Spanish and English, because some people think that if they use English words, they look sophisticated and fancy. And I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. Aren't you speaking English right now? Don't worry, I want to talk about that later on. But here's something interesting. Calling someone fresa isn't really an insult. Some people might laugh about it. But calling someone naco, that's another story. But these words aren't just about social class. There's something deeper happening. Mexico, and maybe all of Latin America, is a place where classism and racism blend together in ways that might shock you. But wait until you hear this next term that perfectly captures this whole situation. Meet the Whitexican. It started as a way to point out how privileged Mexicans are disconnected from reality. Let me show you an example. If you watch my previous video about how much money you need to be rich in Mexico, if not, you can watch it here. You saw a Mexican politician talking about how people live with a sueldito. Notice this word that in English means little salary.
Hemos topado gente muy valiosa que vive con un sueldito de 40, 50 y son felices. Tienen para su familia, para las colegiaturas.
He implied that 40,000 Mexican pesos or $2,000 per month is a low salary. But as we learned in that video, we saw that 40,000 pesos per month is almost double of what the middle class makes. This is a perfect example to describe someone as Whitexican. It's not about being privileged. It's about being privileged and not being aware of your situation. On social media, this disconnect has become a cultural phenomenon. But why the word white in Whitexican? Let's look at some interesting data. I found some recent social mobility surveys in Mexico where they compare in 3 different surveys the wealth distribution by skin tone. And guess what? They found a pattern. People with lighter skin tones are significantly more represented in the highest income brackets. For example, 16% of people in the highest income group have the lightest skin tones, while only 3% have the darkest skin tones. This pattern continues in the workplace. In leadership positions, 6.1% of people with lighter skin tones work as directors and managers, compared to just 2.8% of those with darker skin tones. And check out this, 44% of people with darker skin tones work in support services and manual labor. These numbers become even more significant when we consider that while 43.6% of Mexico's general population lives in poverty, this number rises to 77% in indigenous communities. Why do you think these patterns exist in Mexican society? During colonial times, Mexican society was structured by a system called castas, a system where Spanish-born people and their children occupied the highest social class and economic positions. Let me know in the comments, do you think there are any connections between this historical information and today's statistics? By the way, if you're interested in these aspects of Mexican culture and want to learn Spanish too, I've created an online academy called Trying Spanish. You can learn real Mexican Spanish and culture too. If you're interested, visit my website, tryingspanish.com. And speaking of Mexican culture, here's another term that emerged on social media. Just as Whitexican became a term to point out privilege, another term popped up, Shrekxican. You know Shrek, right? Mexican social media took that character and turned it into memes of working class life. Think about it. Shrek lives a humble life in his swamp. He's seen as an outsider by the fancy people in the kingdom, and sometimes he's judged by his appearance rather than who he is. I want to show you an example that captures the Mexican pop culture with humor. Let me break it down for you. The meme shows Shrek saying, "Vendo cheve barata a 400 el 12. I'm selling cheap beer at 40 pesos for a 12 pack. But then adds, aunque en realidad me la tomaré toda y luego le pegaré a mi vieja. Though really I'll drink it all and then hit my wife." That's not a nice thing to say. Next to him, Fiona says, "Muy buena inversión, gordo." Very good investment, honey. The beer shown is Tecate, a very popular Mexican beer, and the meme is making fun of a stereotype. These memes are very popular in Mexican culture and might make people laugh, but they also show and reinforce Mexican stereotypes. Do you remember at the beginning of this video that some people think that sometimes mixing English sounds fancy? Well, when I started making my videos in English on this channel, I got pretty interesting comments. One of my favorites is this one. El nopal en la cara y tú hablando inglés. Muy mal de tu parte. Let me translate this. They are saying, the cactus on the face and you're speaking English. Shame on you. Now, having the nopal on your face is just a phrase that we Mexicans use to say that someone looks very Mexican, indigenous, basically. Think about that for a second. They are suggesting that I shouldn't be speaking English just because of the way I look. Not because of my accent, not because of my grammar, just because of my appearance. Here's another interesting story. When my husband was teaching at a prestigious international school, his students found my YouTube channel. These kids, yes, children, not adults, found my YouTube channel and left interesting comments calling me chacha, which is a derogatory term for domestic workers. You know what's fascinating? These weren't adults with years of built-up prejudices. These were children with privileged backgrounds who had already learned to judge people based on appearance. It really makes you think how these attitudes are passed down, right? The cool thing is times are changing. People are talking about these things that in the past nobody used to discuss. We are making memes about it, sharing our experiences, and who knows, maybe that's what we need to talk about these invisible rules in our society. Do you see similar patterns in your society? If you want to know more about Mexican culture and society, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment to know if you enjoyed this video. See you in the next video. Adios!